Today we are in Chicago visiting the grave sites of two men who are woven into the fabric of Chicago history. From varying backgrounds and notoriety, these two men are still remembered and talked about to this day. Today we will begin our journey by exploring the life of Harry Caray and then travel to the grave of Al Capone.
You know, when it comes to certain people, there are certain locations, such as their hometown or maybe the place they spend a lot of time, that they're associated with. When it comes to this person that we are visiting today, to me, it does not get any more Chicago than this. We are in Chicago, Illinois today, visiting the grave of Harry Caray.
Although Harry Caray performed play-by-play duties for multiple teams throughout his career, his most well-known and final team was the Chicago Cubs. Born in St. Louis, Missouri, Caray was actually a talented baseball player in his youth. Caray was offered a spot on the University of Alabama baseball team but could not accept due to financial issues. With a playing career not in the cards for Caray, he began to turn his focus towards another avenue to satisfy his love of the game: play-by-play commentary. His long road eventually led him to Chicago, where he left a lasting legacy.
And you know, I really wasn't even a fan of the Chicago Cubs. I live fairly close to Cincinnati, and that was always my team. But, you know, Cincinnati being in the same division as the Cubs, we had a lot of games against them. And, you know, even as a fan, I really appreciated Harry Caray. He was just so entertaining with his catchphrases, his trademark catchphrases, "Holy cow," and "Cubs win, Cubs win." I just thought he was just a great, it was really a joy to listen to him commentate a game. And it's an honor today to be visiting the grave of Harry Caray.
Caray, along with his thick, black-rimmed glasses, worked his way into the hearts of Chicago fans and the fans of visiting teams as well. Caray began working as the play-by-play commentator for the Cubs in 1982, and with the increased exposure of being on a cable superstation, saw his popularity increase. Caray is known for popularizing the tradition of singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" during the seventh-inning stretch of games. His voice, which was not exactly suited for singing, and his over-the-top delivery of the lyrics further endeared him to baseball fans across the country. Harry Caray died on February 18, 1998, from complications of a heart attack at age 83. His funeral at Holy Name Cathedral in Chicago attracted the governor, the mayor, and many former players. Harry Caray is a member of the National Baseball Hall of Fame. The next part of our journey takes us to Mount Carmel Catholic Cemetery, where we will visit the grave of Chicago's most notorious gangster.
Today we are in Chicago, Illinois, and I am currently standing at the grave of famed and notorious Prohibition-era mobster Al Capone.
Al Capone was born in 1899 in New York City. Capone, while in his early 20s, relocated to Chicago and became a bodyguard for Johnny Torrio, who was head of a group that illegally supplied alcohol. After Torrio retired, Capone began expanding the bootlegging operation. Due to friendships with law enforcement and city officials, Capone was able to maintain safety from prosecution. He also established favor in the city by making donations to different charities. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre changed that perception when 7 members of rival gangs were murdered in broad daylight in the streets of Chicago. This led to profound damage to Capone's carefully crafted reputation, causing those with high influence to demand action against him. Newspapers began referring to Capone as public enemy number 1. Federal officials devised a strategy to put Capone away, focusing on tax evasion laws. The case, which captured the attention of the public at the time, was bolstered by a judge that allowed several pieces of condemning evidence to be entered based on Capone's admissions of income and unpaid taxes. He was found guilty and convicted to 11 years in federal prison.
And as you well know, we have seen Al Capone's life dramatized in many different television shows, movies, and different things throughout the media. But make no mistake, when it came to Prohibition-era mobsters, this area was definitely owned and ran by Al Capone.
Upon Capone's conviction, he was immediately neutralized as he could no longer perform the duties of crime boss. Capone's organization, called the Chicago Outfit, continued, largely unbothered by law enforcement. The Chicago Outfit still operated, but not with the same amount of violence that marked Capone's reign. Once Prohibition was repealed, organized crime took on a much lesser role than previous years. Upon his release from prison, a frail Al Capone was referred to Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, but based on his reputation, he was refused admittance. Capone spent the last several years of his life in a state of extreme failing health. In 1946, his physician examined him and concluded that Capone had a mind of a 12-year-old. Capone owned a mansion in Palm Island, Florida, where he would spend the remainder of his life spending time with his wife and grandchildren. In 1947, Capone suffered a stroke. After the initial medical episode, he began to regain consciousness and started improving. However, shortly after this, he became stricken with bronchopneumonia. He went into cardiac arrest and passed away a few days later. Capone, who was originally buried in Mount Olivet Cemetery, later had his remains moved to where his current final resting place is located, here in Mount Carmel Cemetery just outside of Chicago. Capone's carefully crafted reputation fascinated those around at the time and has further propelled him into modern-day folklore. When I made the decision to visit Chicago, there were some famous grave sites that I definitely wanted to visit. To me, these two characters from history personified Chicago. Although they are unrelated in subject and their contributions to history, they do have a place in Chicago folklore. And if you ever get the chance to visit Chicago, I would recommend making a visit to these locations. I want to thank you all for watching my video today and coming along to Chicago with me. I do have another visit or two for my Chicago trip, so be watching for those. And I've also been working on some new stories that I think you all will enjoy. I love interacting with you. Please leave a comment below and find me by searching for Whit Docs on Facebook and Instagram. If you haven't subscribed, please click the subscribe button for me and then click the little bell notification beside of it. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.